Good morning. Please welcome SAME National President, retired Air Force Colonel Charlie Parham, Fellow SAME.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to 2024 JETC right here in Orlando. Let's give it up for that. So I went to high school right down the road in West Palm Beach, so I am thrilled to be here close by. My mom still lives down there. This year's JETC is called Operation Collaboration, and we are going to have a ton of that. I am super proud that that is what SAME does so well, offers industry and government to get together and collaborate. So we've had a tremendous turnout. We have more than 2,700 people here this week. Of course, we have all of our industry partners, old folks like me, but I love seeing all those young folks in uniform. For the newbies out there, you get the Navy folks in whites looking so good. Admiral, thanks for being here. I saw some Army folks in what old people like me would call fatigues, but they're in some even older school brown uniforms. And then, of course, I want to hear it from my Air Force folks who will be out there in blue. So let's hear it from those folks. The conference is going to be great this week. We have more than 70 hours of education and training sessions. You know, SAME offers you all this opportunity to get trained, to get your PDHs. For those folks that are coming in uniform, it didn't always happen. It wasn't by accident that we set up the Joint Engineer Training Conference. It used to be called something else, and then there was a little bit of a challenge. How can we get these folks in uniform? And so we made it the Joint Engineer Training Conference, and that's why it's been so successful. So this week we have the Warfighter Seminar, and we have the Facility Asset Management Forum. They're back. We get senior leaders to engage. We are appreciative of their engagement, and that's what really makes a difference for us as we offer this collaboration platform. We are also going to have the return of GeoWorks, organized by our Geospatial Working Group. That's our 4th year in a row with that. And then we had this new thing that we tried out a couple years ago called Micro Session Theater. That's going to be on the floor of the JETC here, so come on down to the Expo Hall and catch one of those micro sessions there. So speaking of the Expo Hall, we're going to have it open all 3 days this week. In the past, it was a little bit shorter, but we realized that you all want to be on the floor in the Expo Hall interacting with one another, because that's the value that SAME brings, is this meeting new folks, meeting business partners and friends. So there's truly something special for everyone here this week at JETC. My old man words of wisdom are, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So all you young LDPers that I saw going hard last night at the Young Member Fellow event, pace yourselves. It's going to be a long week. Some of us got to bed early, responsible behavior. I'm pretty proud of myself. All right, so just one quick comment. There's plenty of seats over here. I see folks, everybody's filing in from that side. There's plenty of seats over here on stage right, I think it's called. And but let me have one quick safety moment. So in case anything happens, if you need assistance in case of illness or something like that, either locate one of our SAME volunteers or a member of the event staff, and they will make sure you get taken care of quickly. If by some crazy chance we have to evacuate, just listen to the instructions. It will not be my voice you will hear. It will be someone more responsible coming over the loudspeaker for anything like that. So this morning we're going to get started with the graduation of our 5th LDP class. Let's give it up for those folks. So this is our 5th LDP year. The society, I'm president number 104. It took us 99 years to say, hey, we need to have a purposeful program. I guess we were doing it organically, of course, developing leaders, but now we have this program. And so this is our 5th year in a row. And I can tell you it resonates across the society, and so we are super proud to congratulate these young leaders that are going to go out and take off in their organizations. I'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. So my firm has supported 3 folks through the LDP program. We have one in this year's class as well. Megan Windekinet, high expectations for Megan as we single her out amongst the 2,500 people here. So I'm super excited for the LDPers. They go through a wonderful year. They form these bonds that will carry them through. Every class thinks they're the best class. I was informed by this cohort that they truly are the best class, so we'll see if we hear from the others. All right, but this morning, we're going to get a little motivation. We are going to hear from a keynote speaker who is a 12-time Olympic medalist. And so pretty amazing folks that represent our country. Of course, those of you in uniform represent the country in a different way. But when you get to hear the playing of the national anthem, it means something different when it was maybe because of something you did as an athlete. And so we are super happy to have an Olympian guest speaker this morning. It's going to be a great start to a great conference. So as we always do, I'm going to ask you all to all rise. We're going to do the presentation of the colors. We're going to have the honor guard from the Civil Air Patrol of the 463rd Composite Squadron of Kissimmee, and the singing of the national anthem by John Batchelder, who's with HDR, but also a member of our Tampa Bay Post. Color guard, present the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Let's give it up for John. Come on. So one of the privileges of being the president is you get to give out the president's coin, and anytime an SAME member takes on singing the national anthem in front of 2,500 people, it's a pretty cool event. So fantastic job. Well done, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Man, gets me going, gives me goosebumps every time. All right, what separates SAME from other forums out there is that patriotism and that feeling that we get when we hear the national anthem, and that unifies all of us here in this room. Our commitment to patriotism and national security, whether we're civilians, whether we're still in uniform, whether we used to wear the uniform, like so many veterans in the room like me. Thanks to all of you who are currently serving, especially those that can't be with us, that are forward deployed right now. Let's keep them in our thoughts. We're gonna have a great week, excuse me. So events like JTC are not possible without the incredible support of our sponsors and our exhibitors. We have over 200 sponsors and exhibitors here this year. Thank you to all of those companies for their support to both SAME and specifically to JETC. I want to extend a special thanks to our titanium sponsors, those that are really reaching deep into their pockets. So those folks are AECOM, Aptim, Black & Veatch, ECC, Jacobs, Page, Pond, Stantec, and WSP. Let's give them a round of applause, please. This conference is built on helping advance the professionalism of our military industry engineers. As I mentioned, there are over 70 sessions and a variety of different tracks for people to attend, as well as many technical forums where attendees can get the type of training that will help them in their careers. I will add for any of you first-time attendees, especially those in uniform, that the mentorship that you are going to get outside of those technical sessions, whether it's down on the floor or in a bar this evening, who knows, that mentorship can be as equally valuable as those technical sessions, so take advantage of every one of those opportunities. We asked a few of our titanium sponsors to help shed light on the importance of professional development and the role that SAME plays in advancing that collective knowledge. So we'll hear from a few of them on a video, and then we'll hear from a few more tomorrow. So please roll the video.
Professional development is the cornerstone of progress in our industry. That's why we're proud to support initiatives like SAME's Leadership Development Program and STEM camps. At Pond, we believe in continuous learning, investing in our teams to stay ahead of industry trends and innovations. By participating in SAME, we're able to gain invaluable knowledge, but also contribute to elevating our profession.
ECC has been a member of SAME for nearly 30 years, participating in dozens of chapters around the world. The JETC has excellent sessions which are carefully crafted to benefit the military engineering community. In particular, we find those sessions focus on cutting-edge technologies, recent regulatory changes, and case studies are the most useful. Sessions that are co-presented by DoD and industry are particularly interesting because they bring two different perspectives to bear on the subject. At ECC, we support our people to attend as well as present at JETC, as well as post and regional meetings.
As the JETC program evolves in response to the changing industry and the world around us, it provides a great forum for individuals at all levels of the organization to stay current. These sessions offer a collaborative environment where we can put aside our competitiveness and share valuable ideas and lessons learned for the benefit of the industry. Aptim proudly sponsors this event and actively participates in the communities of interest like resiliency and environmental practices.
As CEO of Page, I firmly believe that professional development and education are crucial for staying ahead in our industry. Architecture and engineering are dynamic fields where standards evolve and innovations reshape our approach. That's why we prioritize empowering our employees to pursue continuous learning and growth. Together, we're shaping the future of architecture and engineering while reinforcing our commitment to excellence. At Page, we believe that investing in our people is the key to success.
All right, let's give it up for those folks again. So as I mentioned, it's awesome to be down here in Florida for this. The humidity adds to the joy, a little bit of sweat, bright lights, it's all good. There are 7 posts down here in Florida. We had John representing the Tampa Bay Post singing the national anthem, but there are posts all over the state. One of the privileges of being part of the national leadership team is you get to go and represent the society back to the posts and share what's happening at the national level. So I've been fortunate to travel all over Florida in that regard, and Florida's just a wonderful state. So our society truly lives and breathes at our post level and out at our field chapters. I was in Naples, Italy a couple months ago for a tri-service event. I know it was tough duty, someone had to do it. I brought my wife with me. And we stood up one of our newest field chapters, which is the Poland field chapter. And that Poland field chapter is a super important strategic location, especially given what's going on in the world. So SAME making a difference everywhere we go. For the folks that just came in the back that are standing, there are still plenty of seats over on this side. And Admiral Wang has a few down here in the front next to him that are open too. I'm sure he'd love to have you join him. But seriously, you do not need to stand. You're going to be here for another hour or so. So come have a seat. All right, around the world, SAME members are building vital relationships, whether it's the Poland field chapter right here in Florida, JETC, it doesn't matter. It's those relationships that matter going forward, because you want to have those relationships before they are needed. You know, through our posts, we are delivering on our strategic plan. The Board of Direction just voted in a new strategic plan yesterday. You will see that roll out later this year and take effect in January. I am super excited for that and for the direction of our society. This year alone, across the society, we did a bunch of things. I'll throw out a few numbers to you guys. There were over 500 separate industry government engagement events across the society. There were 300 different events that focused on resilience. There were 600 different events that focused on leadership development. There were 300 different events, and then of course highlighted by our transition workshop in Baltimore, that focused on veteran transition and those supporting activities. And then culminating it all, there were 700 different STEM events trying to get youth inspired to be engineer geeks like us. And so, no small challenge. This year we had 66 posts receive streamer awards for the year, with 53 of those earning that streamers with distinction. So it's a remarkable impact that all those posts are having directly in the communities where they live and work. So many of you made a difference by what I said a year ago. I hope that you find value in the society, and then I hope that you go be the value for others by volunteering. I saw that in spades as I traveled around this year. All right, so let's watch another short video highlighting the year that was for SAME. I love it. I love it. That video captures a ton of the positive energy that you see across the society. I got to be on the road 47 days supporting SAME this year. I had to count that. Sal, my boss down here, reminded me he looks forward to having me back full-time at Matrix soon. But it was wonderful to go out and see that positivity firsthand and to try to contribute to it. And so I got to go, as I mentioned before, from Naples, Italy. I just recently was in the mountains of West Virginia. I went out to Puget Sound in Seattle. I've been here to the beautiful Gulf Coast of Florida as well, supporting different events, and just about everywhere in between, I feel like, as well. I've met countless members who I now call friends, and occasionally customers and business partners. So I'm going to highlight one story. This story started a couple years ago because I believe that it hits on all aspects of what makes SAME so great. So I have a couple of friends down here. I'm going to ask them to stand and I'm going to talk about them for just a couple of minutes. So Michelle and Dave Lyerla, they're right down here in the front. I'm going to ask them to stand. You guys can all stare at them. And so Michelle is the president and the CEO of an 8A, 100% woman-owned small business called Avacy. And Dave is her vice president. So just like most of the households out there, like at my household, I'm the VP and my wife is the CEO. So they run their business the same way. And they've been coming to SAME national events since 2018, but they really started finding value after Michelle bought the company in 2020, and they became regulars at our small business conferences. So I got to meet them when I went to the 2022 Panama City Post-Industry Day, and I signed up as a single for the golf tournament. I had been to a couple other events, and I was racing into town and racing out of town to get on to something else, and I said, I need to enjoy, not just do work. So I said, I'm going to sign up as a single, and I got to play that day with Dave, and I got to play with a guy named Jay Kurowski, who is from Alita, the CEO of Alita Technologies, and we played with Dan Soto, who is at Air Force now leading Global Strike Command, but he was down there at Tyndall back then. And so the four of us had never played golf together before, and we had a ball. We had so much fun that day that it spurred a friendship, and it spurred a little bit of back and forth. And so Dave asked me a little bit about priming federal work and about proceeding towards direct award. We had some great conversations there, and I'll spare you all the details, but let's fast forward the movie a little bit. And last year, Avacy was certified last summer by the SBA as an 8A. So that's a win in and of itself, getting the status. So they said, okay, now that we have this direct award status, let's up our game. So they got a booth for the first time at SBC last year in San Antonio, where they were able to meet with a ton of clients. They had folks from the Corps of Engineers coming up to their booth, and one of the colonels said, hey, I have a video that I show about radiological remediation, and it's your folks that are in the video. And they didn't even know this, of course, and so it's just these wonderful connections. So if you're have a business out there and you don't realize the power of getting a booth, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So they targeted the Corps of Engineers in St. Louis, because that's where they're from originally. But I'm super proud to report that right now they're working through the details of their first sole source contract with the Corps. And so Dave and Michelle, congratulations. You guys are exactly what SAME is all about. You're wonderful people and good friends. Thank you. All right, so you guys can have a seat, but I want everybody to go find them. If you're interested in that same journey, there's someone that just walked the path, and that's what SAME offers. It offers mentorship to folks. You can meet people that have walked the ground before you, ask questions, and proceed in your own personal successful journey, whether it's the folks in uniform or the folks out of uniform. So as many of you know, in 2016, we established the foundation, the SAME Foundation, which over the last few years has begun to make a huge difference. They invest. Every dollar that they get comes right back to the society, investing in STEM outreach, leadership development programs, of course, all under the umbrella of fostering engineering leadership for the nation. The foundation is right by our side, helping us grow the next generation of STEM professionals and engineer leaders. This past year, the foundation built on their momentum, which is continuing next year. They received some major grants and corporate sponsorships and donations from so many of us here in the room today. The signature program of the foundation is the Leadership Development Program. Let's hear it, LDPers. As I mentioned earlier, we will graduate these folks, which is truly a joint environment with participants from the military, from industry, and from academia. But first, we're going to hear from one of those graduates who's going to represent her class, whose capstone project this year exemplifies the amazing creativity and service that LDP is helping bring into reality. So, ladies and gentlemen, first, please welcome Catherine Thomas with Animar Environmental Consulting. Go get it.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you to the SAME Foundation for allowing me to speak both about my utilization project implementation capstone, or UPIC, and allowing me to be chosen to be part of the Leader Development Program's 5th cohort. My cohort started at this meeting last year with a group of all-stars, and one of them is tragically no longer with us, having passed last July. Pam, we miss you, and I will forever associate this meeting with your smile and your desire to collaborate. Rest in peace, my friend. When I was coming up with my UPIC project, I made a goal of adding value to the SAME strategic plan while creating a program that was scalable. The problem that I felt sure I could solve was labor shortage, and the group of companies I felt best to test the program were my colleagues of mine met through the Western Dredging Association, or WEDA. Dream big, they said. The program was teaching currently incarcerated individuals job and life skills so that when they exited incarceration, they had a job offer from a reputable dredging firm. This program was designed during mid-2023, was funded and scheduled towards the end of 2023, and was implemented in Jacksonville in person in 2024 in collaboration with the Jacksonville's Sheriff's Office. I requested $15,000 to fund the entire program from the SAME Foundation. And at the end of the 100-hour in-person training, 17 men earned certifications estimated at over $20,000. Because of the SAME Foundation and being part of this all-star LDP class, I was able to better understand my own personal leadership strengths and weaknesses, and I was able to create a program that not only adds value to the strategic plan of SAME, but can solve parts of the labor shortage problem right now. My 17 students were given the opportunity to believe in themselves again, and according to the program sergeant at Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, they will open the doors to this program whenever it is funded. Look out, world, here we come. Find out more. Thank you. You can find out more about my program and the modules we incorporated and how you can actually help and ensure this is scaled across the country by attending my session Wednesday at 4:30 to 5:30, and that is a shameless plug in case you missed it. But again, thank you to all the donors and the sponsors and the SAME Foundation for believing in us and making our dreams a reality. Thank you.
Come out here to the middle with me. All right. So I got to meet Catherine out in Seattle. I went out to support the Seattle Post Industry Day, and at the social, I just walked up to a table of folks I didn't know, and I didn't realize I was meeting the LDP royalty, and so she launched right into her description of her UPIC program, and I was floored by it because I thought incarcerated folks coming into the industry. I thought that's what the Navy did for recruiting. And so I was a little confused at first, but jokes aside, what an amazing, amazing program. And so, Catherine, thanks for your leadership. Absolutely coin-worthy. Great job. Great job. All right, you can get me back later, Admiral, no problem. All right, so now I'd like the president of our foundation, Dave Nash, and Eric Wilbur, one of our rock stars for many years now with the LDP program, to come join me on the stage as we congratulate the 2024 class.
Thank you, Charlie. Hey, before I introduce the 2024 class, I would like all the LDP alumni to stand up. I want to see where you're at in the room. Stand up, alumni, 2020, 2021, yeah, let's give them a round of applause. These are the real rock stars of our society and our industry, and so thank you. And we've got another group that we just started this week, the 2025 class. You stand up right over here, 2025 class. Let's give them a round of applause. They're starting their journey on LDP, and if you're interested in that, please stop by and talk to some of these folks. Well, incredible. I tell you that Catherine and her project is just one of many, and the impact that is having on our society and our industry. LDP graduates are leading in our society in places such as the National Board, regional vice presidents, COI chairs, post presidents. They're really having an impact. They're also leading in their respective organizations. We have company presidents, vice presidents, directors. And I can just tell you the future of our society and our industry are in great hands. This year, it's my honor to introduce the 2024 LDP graduating class. But before I introduce the class, I want to call your attention to the class over here on my right. We've put a place of honor there, an empty seat. You heard Catherine mention Pamela Nugent a few minutes ago, and we have an empty place for her there. For you see, Pamela was a beloved classmate of theirs, a dedicated member of SAME. Tragically, last summer, just a few months into the LDP program, Pam died in a flood in the town where she lived in New York. The class has been honoring her all year, and today we will have Susan Thames, a foundation member and fellow New Jersey Post member, accept a certificate for LDP appointment on Pam's behalf. With that introduction, let's give some loud and enthusiastic congratulations to the next leaders of our society and the AEC industry. Alexander Bolin. Yeah, don't fall. Lieutenant, junior grade, Joseph Breda. Come on. Captain, Amelia Brooks Cisco. Captain, Kathleen Ann Brunstad. Aaron Burrows. Kevin Chutari. Renee Cortez. Congratulations, man. Travis Cummins. Larry Estrella. J.R. Gregory. Thomas Heesum. Captain Kaylee Koska. Mary Lonquist. She's got a fan club. Larry Mullally. Matthew Nelson. Catherine Thomas. Christian Ward. Major Allison White. And accepting a certificate of LDP acceptance for Pamela Nugent, Susan Thames. Yeah, come on back upstage, folks. And while they're doing that, let's just give them another loud and rousing congratulations to the 2024 LDP graduates.
High expectations, LDPers, high expectations. So my congrats once again to that awesome class, bringing the enthusiasm. If you see them this week, of course, we all wear all kinds of pins and buttons and things like that, but you will see their class wearing a special flower button in honor of Pam. So if you see someone wearing that red flower button this week, you'll know it's one of this class and you can congratulate them. Again, thanks as well to the SAME Foundation and all the generous sponsors out there who are making it possible for amazing leader development program. Dave, thanks for your leadership of the foundation. Now we have one more person. This is a little bit out of cycle from what we usually do at JETC. Usually the awards night is Thursday, but he's not going to be here on Thursday, so it's fitting that we're going to recognize him today because he's been a passionate mentor for future leaders like the LDPers during his entire career. The Walter O. Bacchus Gold Medal is given usually, as I said, at the Society Ball, but our recipient is unable to be there. So as a member of nearly 40 years, he has served the Society with incredible passion a sense of responsibility to promote our profession, and an unwavering commitment of his personal time and resources. His efforts to produce tangible results in industry-government engagement on issues such as partnering, cost engineering, Milcon reprogramming, and of course, I think most people associate him with TORN and bringing up that lovely issue that we continue to wrestle with. But it's all about trying to improve the ability of our community to provide infrastructure and environmental solutions for the nation. He's been a mentor to countless service members and to so many young professionals out there, and to college and high school students. During his years with the Society, he has served at the local level, at the regional level, at the national level. He's been a president of both the Philadelphia Post, the Mobile Post. He was the South Central RVP, and I got to serve with him as a national vice president as well. So the Walter O. Bacchus Gold Medal for Lifetime Achievement in the Society is presented to retired Army Colonel Bob Keyser, fellow SAME. You face forward, buddy. How's it looking out there, Sal? Good? All right.
I could write all my notes on the back of a business card. That's a good thing. Very humbling to receive this award, especially when I look at the folks that have received it before me. And I'm truly honored. I'd like to say thanks to the Society for this recognition. I'd like to say thanks to my family. I'm fortunate enough to have my son here with me today. My wife was unable to attend. I can't be here Thursday because I had a choice. I could go on a cruise with my wife, or I could go to the Society ball. I think I got that right, but family is so important. I know this is Military Appreciation Month, and Friday was Military Spouse Appreciation Day. And I'd like to ask if the military spouses that are in the audience would please stand and be recognized, because they're such an important part of who we are. Tony Price and Buddy Barnes, thanks for the nomination. I really appreciate it that you thought that highly of me. Thanks to all the mentors that I had, and we talk a lot about mentoring. I've had some phenomenal ones over the years, General Claire Gill, General Bob Van Antwerp, Joe Corrigan. A lot of times we think our mentors have got to be senior to us, have got to be older than us. Joe is not that case. But he's so much smarter than I ever thought of being in how things actually get done in Washington, in the Pentagon. So as you're looking for a mentor, look for those that have got knowledge that you don't have, knowledge and experience. I'd like to leave you all with one charge, and that's a call to service. LDP class, you've put a year into this, you're just getting started. Service doesn't happen overnight. It's a long-term thing, and it's going to take time. As I look back on some of the things that Charlie talked about, partnering, it took us 2.5 years to get it started back in the 80s. Milcon reprogramming, a 2-year process to get that changed. Everybody's beloved TORN process. We worked on that for over 4 years to try and get that turned around. We're not done with it yet, but we've at least made some headway in getting that turned around. So service and making things better for our service, our society, and our nation, it's not an overnight thing. So I would call all of you to devote yourselves to that service. I know we've got a pathway to fellow that we talk about a lot. Don't look for that light at the end of the tunnel. Don't worry about, I've got to become a fellow. Look at achieving things and making life better for our society and for our nation, because that's what it's all about. the fellow will come with that. But again, so deeply appreciate this honor. I know y'all didn't come up here to listen to me. You're waiting to hear from Dara. Again, thank you very much for this honor.
Thanks. Well done. Bob, thanks. I was a little bit nervous. Bob can get a little bit wordy sometimes, and so that was very well done, sir. Way to keep it on time. Like you said, you are excited to hear our guest speaker. I am as well. So we're going to cue up a video here, but let me give a little brief introduction. So a 5-time Olympian. Our culture, our society pays attention every 4 years to all of these non-revenue generating sports, all of these former amateurs, sometimes now professionals. They go out and put it all on the line. They train their entire life, sometimes for just seconds of glory. This person represented the United States 5 different times: 1984, 1988, 1992, 2000, and 2008. What sets her apart is not just her longevity in the sport of swimming, but her ability to consistently perform at the very highest level. One of her most notable achievements came in 2008 Beijing Olympics, when, at the young age of 41, she became the oldest swimmer to compete in the Olympics, where she won 3 silvers that year. Her determination and spirit served as an inspiration to athletes of all ages, proving that age is just a number when it comes to pursuing one's dreams. My knees will be listening when we hear that message. Age is just a number. All right, let's please cue the video.
She's just doing things that I don't know if another human being can do. I don't know. She's kind of, setting a standard for what's humanly possible.
I will do anything I possibly can in legal form to make me the best that I can be, and I want to have the best resources I possibly can to be the best I can be.
In July at the Olympic trials, she won both the 50 and 100-meter freestyles, setting a record in the 50. Another new American record for the 41-year-old mom.
I've finally done away with the myth that you have to be a teenager to be a fast swimmer. I'm opening the doors for other people to do things and not put an age limit on their dreams.
One length of the pool, Torres in lane 4, Campbell above her in lane 5.
Not bad on the reaction, a little slower than she was in semis. Came up swimming well, middle of the pool, trinket right there in the yellow cap, doing a pretty good job herself.
Below Torres in lane 3 is Britta Steffen, who won the gold in the 100. She is behind Torres right now. Torres is ahead of Campbell at the moment. Can she hold off the 16-year-old? Torres getting some pressure from Steffen below her. Steffen's coming on below Torres, and it's going to be Steffen just getting ahead of Dara Torres with a silver. Campbell with the bronze.
1/100th of a second. How many close races are we going to see here at these Olympic Games? 1/100th of a second.
It's a new American record that Dara first broke as a young teenager. But an absolute incredible story. Silver medal here at the age of 41.
Come on down, Dara. Take it away.
Yeah. How y'all doing this morning? Good? Woo! All right. Gosh, I have to tell you, it's been 16 years since those Olympic Games, and every time I give a motivational talk, I lose. And I'm just hoping at some point someone will make it so I win, instead of watching myself lose by 100th of a second every single time. So Anyway, it's so good to be here. And first and foremost, I want to thank you all for your service and what you've done in representing the United States. And it doesn't even, like, you outweigh us and outblow all of us, athletes, Olympians that represent the United States. You are there representing us. And I just want to thank you for your service and everything you do for our country. So thank you so much. Anyway, so I got swimming when I was real little. I had 4 older brothers. Whatever they would do, I would do. And my mom would take me to the pool, and they were all in the pool swimming, and I was this young kid just bouncing off the walls, running in the bleachers, and my mom finally was like, I need to have her do something. Like, she has way too much energy. And I think back then they called it hyperactivity, but now it's called ADD. And so she put me in a pool, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. It was just, I don't know, I just kind of felt one with the water when I swam. I mean, I tried soccer, I did tennis, I did softball, I did basketball, volleyball, everything, but I just really loved swimming. And you know, when you have a passion for something, you have to kind of go for it. So I went to my first Olympic Games when I was 17 years old, and back in 1984. I'm really aging myself here. And I was on a relay and won a gold medal, and it was wonderful. It was in Los Angeles, my hometown, and my parents were there and friends, and it was a great experience. And then I moved on, went to University of Florida, go Gators, and no Gators in here? I swam there, ended up being a 28-time All-American, went to my second Olympic Games in Seoul, Korea, and won a silver and a bronze in relays and placed 7th in an individual event. And then I retired, came back in '92, and decided to make a comeback for those Olympic Games. I remember I was working at NBC Sports in New York, and I was logging some tape, and there was a previous Olympian named Brian Bottano, who was a figure skater, who was talking about making a comeback, and that word just kind of resonated with me. And I started thinking, well, you know, I've been out of the sport a year and a half after the '88 Olympics, like maybe I can just give it a try and try one more time. So I went back to University of Florida, trained, and made a comeback, and swam in the '92 Olympics on a relay again, and won a gold medal. So all of my medals were in relays. And so that individual medal sort of eluded me for my career. And that was it, I was done. You know, I had 4 Olympic medals, I was 25, back at those Olympic Games in '92. Being 25, I was called the grandmother on the team because I was the oldest swimmer on the team then. Now it's sort of like the median of how old you are when you swim, but that was considered very old. And so I moved on with my life. I moved back to New York, and I was doing a little modeling, some TV work. For 7 years, just enjoying my life out of the pool. Now, the funny thing about swimming is when you retire, you either just want nothing to do with it, or you may continue a little bit and swim in the master's program, or, you know, go to the pool every now and then swim. I wanted nothing to do with it. Like, I was done. I didn't touch a pool for 7 years. And then about a year before Olympic trials in 2000, I was out to dinner with some friends, and we were talking swimming. And the reason we were talking swimming is because, you know, a year before NBC starts, you know, showing little clippets of the Olympics, or they have their Olympic logo on the television set. And so they were asking me about who I thought was, you know, we should look out for in the 2000 Olympics. And I'm like, you know what, I haven't been in the pool, been to a swim meet in 6 years. Like, I have no idea who's swimming now, and you know, I just don't know. And so, but they kept talking about it, and finally they turned to me and said, hey, have you ever thought about maybe coming back and swimming? And I was 32 at the time. I said, no. I said, you know, considering they called me grandma at 25, I don't know what they'd call me if I tried to make a comeback at, you know, 33 years old. And they just kept talking about it. I'm like, look, no, this isn't happening. That night I go home into my apartment, and I wake up having these nightmares that I'm back in the Olympics, and I'm diving in the wrong lane, and when I do a flip turn, my feet hit the wall, and like all these horrible things. Like, God forbid I have a nice dream where I'm winning a gold medal in an individual event, but no, I was thinking all the negative stuff. So the next day, I'm like, okay, let me just go work out. I love working out. It'll just de-stress me. I won't think about what they were talking about comeback. And I go to Central Park, and I'm running, and I'm feeling pretty good. And all of a sudden, this like elderly woman like passes me. I'm like, what's she doing? And I'm starting to go a little bit faster. And then she goes faster, and I'm like, she's like 70 years old. And I'm like, what, you know? And I'm like trying, and she just takes off. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I realized at that point, I'm like, wow, like I'm still kind of competitive. Like, I know she was in her 70s, but you know, Like, I wanted to beat her. Like, why did I letting her, like, and, you know, you can't take a fish out of water, so swimmers aren't really good runners. But it really bothered me. And so then I started thinking about it more and more, and I thought, wow, maybe I can make a comeback. Like, can I? Like, but I'm old, and I haven't swum in 6 years. Like, this is crazy, 6, 7 years. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna call my mom. She's like a good, you know, person to call and will talk sense into me and stuff. And she lived out in Sun Valley, Idaho. And I was in New York, so I waited till appropriate time to call her with the time difference. And I gave her a call. I said, hey, Mom, you know, how you doing? A little chit chat. I said, you know, I'm thinking about coming back. She's like, oh, great. Like, what flight are you on? I'll pick you up from the airport. And I was like, no, like coming back, you know, and she had me on speakerphone with my stepdad, who was a tennis player. And she said, wait, coming back? I'm like, yeah, like a comeback, like a swimming comeback. She's like, oh. And there was like silence, and my stepdad's yelling in the background, I think that's great, you should follow your dreams. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was hoping they would like talk sense into me, but now I have 2 people backing me to do this. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna call a coach who had been an Olympic coach a number of times, and he was the Stanford women's coach, and he was going to be the head coach for the 2000 Olympic women's team. And I thought, I'll just call him, and you know, if I did want to make a comeback, like he would be someone who I'd want to train with. And so I give him a call, and we're talking and talking, and I said, you know, I'm thinking about making a comeback. And he's like, huh. And he goes, what, how old are you? And I'm like 32, I'd be 33 in 2000. He's like, okay. And he said, let me think about it, and let me talk to the team, the girls team, and see what they think about having, you know, another person come in who hasn't swum for 7 years. And, you know, swim with them. And I'm like, great, like no problem. And so day go by, 3 days go by, 5 days go by. I'm like, oh my gosh. I go, and I am the most impatient person in the world. I think I'm on Zoloft now, but yeah, I'm very impatient. And so I just was like, when is he gonna call me? And finally a week went by. And he comes on the phone, he's like, how soon can you get out here? And I was like, what? And he's like, I hadn't made any plans. I just was like kind of just throwing it out there and see if it would stick on the wall. But he was like, yeah, come on out. He said, you have less than a year to train, so figure out how to get out here, move, like do what you need to do, and practice is on Monday. And this was like a Friday. I was like, oh my gosh. So I book a ticket, I pack up clothes, and I pack up all my old swim gear from 1992, and I fly out there. And the next morning, I'm crashing at a friend's, and I go to morning practice, and he has a big dry erase board, white board, on the deck, and he starts riding and riding. Now, mind you, I had not gotten in the pool for 7 years. And I remember when I was in the locker room, before walking out on deck, I had this like old swimsuit on and these big, huge, look like a diving mask. That's how old my goggles were. Goggles, and all these girls had slick ones and really shorter like swimsuits and bikinis, and I'm like really looking like an old person, and I'm dusting off my cap. And so I get out there, and the coach is riding on the dry erase board, and one of the things he did tell me is that if we're gonna do this, you have to listen to me and you have to buy into my story. He goes, I am the leader here. It doesn't mean you can't question me and ask me whatever you want to ask me, and we'll work it out. But I need communication. I need you to understand and believe in what this process is and what I'm telling you. And that was really important for me to hear that, because, you know, obviously you question your leaders sometimes and stuff, and it's okay to question them, but you want an understanding. And once you understand what the process is, and for me it was my training for that year, then you have to believe in them and buy into it. And that was really an important lesson that I learned. So as he's riding this workout, I look up there and it's like 3,000 yards. I'm like, oh, that's not bad. I used to do like 6,000, like that's easy. And so he starts saying, okay, this is our warm up. And I'm like, hey, which part, like the first or second? He's like, no, this whole thing. I'm like, wait a minute, 3,000 warm up? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And so I dive in the pool and I start swimming, and I'm feeling really good, and I have a nice long stroke, and that's the way I was taught to swim. And I do a flip turn and I come back, and as I come back, there's a kickboard in the pool stopping me as I do my flip turn, because in swimming, you guys know probably if you're in a pool, it's really hard to hear. And so the kickboard stops me, and I'm thinking, wow, he's already gonna compliment me on my stroke. I felt pretty good for 2 laps after 7 years. It's like riding a bike, you know? And so I put my goggles up. I'm like, yeah, Richard, what's up? You know, and he's standing on the pool deck with his hands on his waist, and he's like, you know, Dara, we don't swim like that anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, your stroke? Like, we used to teach people your stroke because you had a nice, long, smooth stroke. But everything has changed over the years since you've been retired. And I'm like, really? And he said, yeah. And now remember, when you're so used to doing something over and over again your whole life, like it's kind of like just natural what you do. And so he proceeds to lie on the hot pool deck in Palo Alto in August and show me how the head position is different, your body position is different, where your hand enters is different, where your hand leaves is different, how you breathe is different, where you're like, if you're looking down or looking up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of stuff. And so he was like, tell you what, he goes, remember I told you on the phone that you have to buy into what my plan is for you? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, we have a swim camp every summer for a few weeks, and everyone's coming in tomorrow. I'm like, oh, you want me to talk to them? And he's like, no, I want you to do the swim camp. I'm like, well, you just told me I did the stroke wrong, so how am I going to demonstrate? He's like, no, you're going to learn from these kids. And I was like, what? And I'm like, okay. So next morning, I do my practice, and as I'm finishing the warm down, just herds of kids come in, like 200-300 kids. And they give them these white swim caps, and they write on a Sharpie their last name because it's hard to tell who you are when you're in a pool and stuff. And I get out of the pool, I'm like, oh my gosh, they hand me a cap, says Torres on it, I put it on, and I walk over to where these kids are, and they took all of the lane lines out of the pool, and they had everyone sit around a big, huge Olympic-sized pool, a 50-meter pool. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, hey, what's up to this 7-year-old next to me? And, and they're like looking at me like, whose mom are you? Why are you here? That's not nice, And I was like, no, I'm learning too, And so they start the camp, and they said, okay, who would like to demonstrate this first stroke drill? And they all like literally turned to me. I'm like, no, I'm here too. I need to learn. So one of you guys go do it. You 8-year-old go do it or whatever. And so that was what I had to do. Like, I was going to do anything I could to be the best I could be, even if it meant being with 7 to 17-year-olds in a pool and relearning how to swim. So one of the things that was very interesting to me is, I pick up on things very easily. You tell me it once, I get it. But there were so many different changes to the stroke, and I was so used to doing it for so many years. It was very hard for me to get out of that routine of the old days of what I used to do. And so I worked on it for like a year. And about 3 weeks before Olympic trials, we had a swim meet. And my coach came up to me during warm-up, and it's a preliminaries and finals, and a lot of the kids that I'd be swimming against at trials were going to be at this meet, and so obviously I wanted to win. And he comes up to me, he said, Dara, you're still not doing your stroke correct. You need to rotate. When you swim freestyle, you don't swim flat. You swim from side to side, and you can see it in the underwater cameras. And he's like, you're rotating more on one side and not the other. And I said, oh, I'll fix that. He's like, no. He said, I need you to breathe on both sides when you swim. So you breathe on one side, take 3 strokes, and breathe on the other side. It's called alternate breathing. Well, swimmers are very dominant on one side, so I'd always breathe on my left no matter what. That was like my favorite side, done it my whole entire life. But he wanted me to switch this up, at this meet. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do it in the preliminaries, but in the finals, like I really want to win, so I'll go back to what I was doing if we make that deal. He's like, okay. So I swim in the preliminaries, swimming pretty good, qualified first, and I'm like, okay. And I'm doing the warm-up, and he's like, Dara, for the finals, and he says, you're still not doing it right. You're not turning over correctly. And I'm like, look, you said I want to win this race. And he's like, do you actually care about this race, or do you care about Olympic trials and Olympic games? And I'm like, point well taken. And I said, okay. He goes, you need to learn to swim like this so you can evenly rotate on both sides. I'm like, fine, whatever, So I get on the blocks, and I'm kind of like pissed off a little bit, and I'm getting ready, and they say take your marks, and I dive in, and I'm like, this is so stupid. And I'm breathing on one side. I'm like, I can't believe he's making me do this. And I'm breathing on the other side, and I touch the wall, and I win and break an American record. And I get out of the pool. And he's like, so, and I'm like, let's do this the rest of the summer. I go, I'm in, let's do this. So sometimes I have to kind of see it to believe it, but again, it's all about trusting your leader, and I had to believe in him with what he was saying. Now, the funny thing about that story is I made the Olympic team in 5 events. In Sydney, I go to the Olympics, and right before the finals of the 50, which was my best event, and the one you saw up there that I lost by 100 of a second in 08, he comes up to me, and I have about 30 minutes until I'm supposed to be on the starting blocks. And he says, you know what, Dara, you're rotating so well on both sides. I think you can go back to how you originally do it and just hold your breath. And I was like, wait, what? And I started to realize, I'm like, you know what, at least I'm mature enough to understand that sometimes things get thrown at you and you have to be able to adjust really quickly. Athletes are very superstitious. And I don't know if you see like football players walking out and they all have to touch a certain thing, or, you know, you have your food that you eat every time before you compete. And so we're just very superstitious. And so for him to come up to me 20 minutes before I'm supposed to go on the starting block and say, okay, now I want you to go back, and didn't even practice it. I've been doing that for, 6 weeks now, alternate breathing. It was a little bit of a challenge, but I'm like, all right, I believe in him, let's do that. And I got up in the blocks and won a bronze medal, which is my best individual medal ever, and broke the American record, and, was very happy. It was a lesson that I learned, though, about, again, listening to your leader. So my last event at those Olympic Games in 2000 was a relay, and we won a gold. And I remember standing on the podium, and I'm so happy, and I'm like, just don't cry, because the cameras are on you, and you see that red light go on the camera, and I just start bawling. And the American flag is raising, and we're singing the national anthem, and I'm just crying, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, why am I crying? I should be like really happy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have a job to go home to. Like, I took off a year to go do this, follow this dream, and I have no work when I get home, and what am I going to do with my life? And I should just be taking in the national anthem and enjoying the flag going up and that gold medal around my waist, and I am bummed. And so I get off the award stand, and we do our sort of victory lap, and we have t-shirts, and we're throwing them in the stands, and then I have to go into drug testing. And I was one of the last ones in there. I don't know, I couldn't go. And, people are watching you, and you're a little nerve-wracking. And so I finally am the last one out, and I walk out and into the Sydney arena to get out to the buses to go back to the Olympic Village, and I'm just kind of moping, and there's this reporter there along with a film crew, and they're like, oh, Miss Torres, can we ask you some questions? We've been waiting for you. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were waiting. He's like, yeah. He said, do you have some time? I'm like, yeah, I got all the time in the world now. And he said, well, we appreciate it, thank you so much. And he puts it on. We did like a 10-minute interview. The very last question he asked me, he's like, you just took off 7 years, you came back, you won 5 Olympic medals. Do you think you'll do that again in another 7 years at 41? And I looked at him like, that's really the stupidest question I've ever heard, I mean, when you're younger and you think of your parents in their 40s, like, oh my God, that's like so old. And so, needless to say, I'm still trying to find the guy to apologize. I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be swimming competitively in my 40s. So fast forward to 2006, I'm pregnant with my daughter, super happy, about 6-7 weeks along. And I said to my doctor, I said, hey, I like to exercise. I like the way it makes me feel on the inside. It relieves stress. I like the way it makes me look on the outside. Is it okay if I exercise while I'm pregnant? He's like, yeah, that's no problem. He said, but if you're going to exercise, you have to make sure that you don't get too out of breath, because it is hard for the baby to breathe. I said, great, and so I go to the gym and I find the hardest machine that you can find, which is that, rolling stair thing where you're just like, oh my God, and you're holding on, and then you're hanging on, and then you're like, so I'm like, I'm going to do that. And I go up, and I'm going along, and I'm starting to feel a little nauseous. I'm like, God, what did I eat? And I know I'm pregnant, but I didn't know you get sick that early. And I'm like, God, I don't feel good. And I get off, and I lose my cookies. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I wipe it up, and I go home, and I'm like, well, that was a waste. And so next day, wake up feeling great. I'm going back to that gym again, and there I'm staring at that Stairmaster. I get on, I'm like, I feel pretty good. Like 10 minutes in, I'm like, oh my God, I feel nauseous. I get sick again. Everyone's looking at me. I'm like, I'm really sorry. And I clean it up, and I'm like, I go home, I'm like, this isn't good. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I need to work out. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, wait a minute. I can go swim. If I swim, there's a gutter, I get sick, I keep going, no one knows. Like, I'm gonna go swim again. I have to swim. It's 80 degrees, I'm in Florida. Like, let's go swim. And so I go to the pool, and I walk into the office, and there's an older woman in there, and I say, excuse me, I'd like to find out about your swim programs. And this is in Coral Springs, Florida, a little south of here. And I'd never swum around in that area. I've swum in Boca and Mission Bay and stuff, but never in Coral Springs. And so I said, I wanted to find out about your swim programs. And she looked at me, she's like, well, have you ever swum before? And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. And She said, okay, well, you know, we have these brochures over here. Why don't you take a look at these brochures? It talks about each swim group that's at this club. And, you know, you could pick a group and be in it. And I'm like, okay. And so I go over and there's the red group, green group, yellow group, blue group. And I'm like, and I'm looking and I'm reading. And after about literally 20 minutes, she's like, can I help you? And I said, I don't know what group to be in. And she said, well, she said to me, okay, if you don't know what group to be in, have you ever been in a swim meet before? And I said, yes. And she said, all right, I'm gonna hand you a piece of paper. If you have any accomplishments, write them on the piece of paper. And I'll give them to the coach and he can decide what group you're in. I'm like, okay. So I'm writing and writing and I'm like, do you want world championships? I'll put world championships. Pan American Games? Yeah, I guess I'll do that. Oh, 9 medals? Yeah, I guess I'll write that too. When I'm writing and she's like, Jesus, like what is taking you so long? And so I fold it up and I hand it to her. She's like, did you put your name and number on there? I'm like, oh yeah. And so I put it on and I give it to her. And I said, thank you so much. And I leave. And literally like a couple hours later, the coach calls me and he's like, why didn't you tell her who you were? And I'm like, I don't know. I said, you know, I've never met you and I don't assume anyone knows who I am. So I just did what she asked me to do. And he said, well, why don't you come to the pool tomorrow and we'll take a look around and talk about what group to be in. I said, great. Didn't tell him I was pregnant. I was about 7 weeks and didn't tell him. And I get to the pool and we're walking around and it's a beautiful 50-meter Olympic-sized pool. There was a kid's pool. There was a diving well. There was another 25-yard by 25-meter pool. It was 80 degrees. I'm like, this is wonderful. And then there's a big gym there attached to it. And as we're walking around, we're talking. And the whole entire time we're talking, I assumed he knew my age. I'd never met him before. I'd seen him at swim meets. He's like, oh, we have a great master's program, master's this, master's that. Never like, hey, I'd love for you to swim with my kids since you're like an Olympian. It was always like, you're kind of too old, you're just gonna go with a master's. Well, when you're growing up a swimmer, when you think masters, you think like 60, 70, 80-year-olds, but it actually starts at like 19 or 20 years old, which I didn't know. And so I said, all right, I'm gonna swim masters. And I swam for about, 4 or 5 months. I let my coach know that I was pregnant, and the master's coach. And about like 6 months along, I'm swimming along, I'm doing a set, and there's this guy out of the corner of my eye who's racing me. I'm like, what's he doing? And I start going faster, and I'm like wobbling a little bit, and he's going faster, and I'm like, he's this middle-aged man, he wants to beat me. There's no way I'm gonna let him beat me. And I'm going and going and going. I touch the wall, and the coach is standing, like, what are you doing? I'm like, I can't help it. This middle-aged man, he's trying to beat me, and he knows I'm 6 months pregnant, but all he wants to say is he beat an Olympian, and I just can't have him beat me. He's like, Dara, you know what your doctor said? I'm like, I know, and I don't know if it's the hormones, but here go like the competitiveness again. I'm like, God, when is this gonna die down? Like, I just am so competitive. And so he said, tell you what, go 30 seconds after him, let him go, and then you can go. I said, fine. So he goes, and I'm like, oh my God, it's only been 10 seconds. Like, how am I gonna catch up to him, whatever? And I'm like, and I'm racing, I'm trying to catch up to him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be horrible because like the doctor said, if I'm having a hard time breathing, the baby is. And so finally after that workout, I'm like, you know what, the next few months, I'm just gonna go on my own and do my own thing because this is not good. And I'm gonna be 39 years old when I have this kid. It's my first child and my only child, and I wanna make sure everything's okay. So about a week before I deliver, the head coach who initially took me around, Michael, he said, hey, Dara, I see you're swimming on your own now. I said, yeah. And he's like, I have a favor to ask you. I'm like, sure. And he said, we have a swim meet in a month, so I know you deliver in a week. Do you think you can ask your doctor if it's okay if you can swim in this meet? And I was like, now I'm looking at my 9-month belly. I'm like, this is such a guy thing to ask. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'll tell him. I'm sure he won't mind. Well, I never asked him. Get to the delivery room and I have my baby and the doctor's like, congratulations, and I'm like, thanks. And I don't know if it's like, the epidural speaking because I feel pretty good. And the doctor said, I wish you all the best. And as he's leaving, I grab his lab coat. I'm like, hey, I have a swim meet in 3 weeks. I was asked to swim in. You don't mind if I swim in it, do you? And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's just been 3 weeks. It gives me time to recover from having the baby. And he's like, Dara, you can't do anything aerobically for 6 weeks, but if you want to go to the gym, go ahead. I'm like, great. So next day rolls around. I did not want to go to the gym. It took about a week and a half, and I'm finally feeling good. I'm like, I'm going to go to the gym and start working out. And so I'm in there doing those tricep extensions with a rope, when you're just kind of going like this, and I'm feeling good. I'm like, oh, I'm getting some muscle back. And I look over the side of my shoulder. I'm like, is that my doctor? And I'm like, oh my God. I go, what if he was kidding about coming to the gym? And so I'm like, turning with the rope, and I'm like, hopefully he won't see me. And I get this tap, and I'm like, hey, Dr. Zafran, how you doing? He's like, good. He goes, I see you working out. I'm like, look, you said I can go to the gym the next day. I go, I haven't done anything aerobic. And he's like, yeah, no, it's good. Doing some small talk. I'm feeling great because the endorphins are going from working out. And I'm getting the nerve finally to turn to him at the end of this conversation. I said, hey, I have a swim meet in a week and a half. You don't mind if I swim in it, do you? And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. I want to go out and swim. He's like, yeah, go ahead. I'm like, what? And he's like, go ahead, us doctors, we say 6 weeks, we don't really know, but just be careful. And as he's like still saying that, I'm like running out the door, going to my house, putting a swimsuit on, really not a pretty sight, going to the pool and getting in and swim because I have a week and a half to swim in this meet, this masters meet. And I come to find out that the head coach, Michael, wanted me in this meet because he wanted it to be like, oh, an Olympian just had a baby and she's in our meet and everyone should come watch and hopefully the city can make money. So that was the whole emphasis behind that. So anyway, I swam in the meet, I won, it was fun, that was it. But what happened was my daughter's dad at the time hadn't swum for since college, and when I got in and started swimming when I was pregnant, he was like, oh, I want to do that too. And so after that meet, he's like, oh, you did really well. I'm like, thanks, you did too, honey. And he says, there's a meet in 3 months, we should go to it. It's out at Stanford, we train for 2,000, we can bring our daughter Tessa, it'd be so much fun. I'm like, oh, do I really want to do this? Now the problem with me is that if I say I'm going to do something, I can't do it half-assed. I have to put everything in. And so I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? I'm a newly mom. I have an infant at home. Am I going to feel guilty going to the pool when I should be home with her? How am I going to balance all this? And I thought, you know what? There are so many working parents out there who are inspirations to me, who do what they love to do, but also are great parents, even if they aren't there 24/7. And so that kind of gave me the inspiration to go and swim in this meet. So I started training about 3 days a week for 3 months. And we fly out with Tessa to Palo Alto, and it's literally one of the biggest meets I've ever been to. Since 2000, they built another 50-meter pool, so there were 2 side by side. The men swam in one pool, and the women swam in the other. And I swim the 50 freestyle, and I do really well somehow. I don't know, I qualify for Olympic trials. Didn't mean to, but I did. And there are about 2,000 swimmers at this event. And after I qualified for Olympic trials, people started coming up to me and said, hey, wouldn't it be great to see a 40-year-old in the Olympics? I'm like, yeah, who's going? Let's cheer him on. I would love that, And after a while, when people started coming up, I was like, wait a minute, they're talking about me. I'm like, wait a minute, can I do this? Oh my God, I'll be in my 40s. I just had a kid. Now, all this stuff going through my head. And finally, the peer pressure of all of these master swimmers coming up to me and saying, you should represent us middle-aged people in the Olympics. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll do it, And that was it. It wasn't like I've been thinking about this for years, and it was just the nagging of these people. And I get back to Florida, and I said to my boyfriend, I was like, what did I say I would do? He's like, train for another almost 2 years for the Olympics. I'm like, oh. And I was like, yeah, okay, that would be fun, If I can get someone to watch Tessa while I'm training and, it could be in my schedule, maybe I'll do this. And so I reached out to Michael, the head coach in Coral Springs, and he was like, yeah, I think that's great, but you can swim with the Masters team. So he wanted nothing to do with it. And I remember I was like, as psychotic as this was, I went to my orthopedic surgeon, because I'd had some surgeries, and I'm like, hey, can you just x-ray my body? I just want to make sure, when I make this comeback, he's like, you're making a comeback? I'm like, yeah, I just want to make sure all my parts are okay. And he was looking at me, and I'm like, yeah, please. And he's like, okay. And I don't even know if they push the camera thing to x-ray me, and I come out, he's like, yeah, you look great. And I'm like, okay. And I just needed the confidence. And so whatever negativity I had, can my body do this? Can I do this while being a parent to a newborn? Can I train like the kids train? There were so many things I was thinking about while I was deciding if I should do this. By the time I got it all out of my system, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this, and I'm winning a gold medal. And every morning I woke up, and every day I went to bed, I thought that I was going to win a gold medal. And it's amazing how positivity can really play a role in what you do. So my first thing I had to do was find a sponsor. And I think it's always good to keep connections. I tell young kids this, that when you meet people, write a thank you note, tell them how much you enjoyed meeting them if you did, and just to keep the connections you have. And so one of the connections I had from years prior was Michael Bloomberg, who was the mayor of New York, and owns Bloomberg Network. And I thought, well, he'd be a good guy to go and ask for money. And so I thought, well, how am I going to do this? And I'm not really good at like asking for things. I like to give. I don't like to ask. And so I called him up and said, hey, I'm coming up to New York. I'd love to have lunch with you. I need to talk to you about something. He's like, sure. So I said, can I bring my daughter? He's like, yeah, no problem. So we go up, and since he was mayor, we had lunch in Gracie Mansion in New York. And we're sitting there, and we have the appetizer, and I didn't ask. And then we have the lunch, and I didn't ask. And now it's the dessert. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to ask him. And, I'm just not good at that. And so I'm like, you know what? You're never going to know unless you ask. Even if it's no, at least you asked and you have an answer. And so I said, well, I needed to ask you something as to why we're having lunch, because I was wondering how long it was going to take. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. And so I said, hey, listen, I'm making this comeback in swimming, and I wanted to know if you'd sponsor me for the next 2 years. And he looked at me and he said, aren't you too old? And he's very sarcastic like that. And I said, well, yeah, that's the point. And I'm too old. I'm trying to prove people that I can do this. And so he's like, yeah, just let me know how much and I'll do it. But that sentence of aren't you too old, that question stuck with me the entire time I was training, because it's amazing how you could take a negative and turn it into a positive. And that fueled me. Like I was like, I'm going to show him, because everyone thought I was too old, and everyone thought there was no way. I just had a baby, but then I started thinking, well, if Nolan Ryan can hit a no-hitter at 44 years old, and Jack Nicklaus can win a Masters at 46, why can't a 41-year-old mom make an Olympic team? So I'm like, screw them, I'm doing this. So that's what I did, and that was my thought process. And so I get to Olympic trials, and I started thinking about the road to get to the Olympic trials. And one of the things that really helped me is I know I couldn't do this by myself. I had to put a team of people together with all the same goals, without any egos. And yes, mine was the training part, but I had a stretching trainer, I had a strength coach. I eventually got to swim with Michael after 7 months when I was beating his kids by like 4 and 5 seconds. And so I put a team together of people that I knew we all had the common goal. And it's a big lesson that I learned when I was preparing for the 2008 Olympics, is that I couldn't do it by myself, that the key was putting a team together when everyone worked together. And I want to share with you something that spoke to me about the power of teamwork. In 1960 at the Olympic Games in Rome, Wilma Rudolph was declared the fastest woman in the world. What very few people remember is she was a woman of enormous grace and dignity. She wore braces on her legs until she was 12 years old. Later in life, she wrote, no matter what accomplishments you make, somebody helps you. And it speaks to the connections among us that make us excellent or leave us simply average. And Wilma Rudolph, by the way, found her strength in her family. Of her illness, her doctor said she would never walk. Her mother said she would, so she listened to her mom. So I went to Olympic trials, and I made the team in 2008 at 41 years old. From Olympic trials, you go straight to a training camp, and then you go to the Olympic Games. So I remember going to training camp and kind of thinking to myself, okay, now where do I fit in here? I'm 41 years old. The youngest girl on the team is 15. The coaches are younger than I am. Like, who am I going to hang out with? And I remember going to the cafeteria, and there was a food fight I had to stop. I remember waking up in the middle of the day because I was taking a nap in between training sessions and pounding on some kids' doors like, turn your music down, I can't sleep, I'm trying to nap. And so it was very different for me being in the Olympic Games at 41 compared to when I was 17 years old at my first Olympic Games. So it was like a 24-year span. So we get to Beijing, and they say, okay, when we land, we're on the airplane, when we land, we're going to go right to the Olympic Village, check in, grab your swim gear, and we're going right to the pool. We're like, great. So we get to the pool, and I remember walking in, and the pool was down like in a basement level, and so when you walk in, you're on street level. And I remember walking in, and when we landed in Beijing, there was a lot of fog and smog, and you couldn't really see a lot. And so when we walked in, we walk in on that main floor, and we're in the balcony looking over at the pool, and all the kids are like, ew, what's that stuff in there? It's like all foggy and smoggy, and oh my God, like, blah, 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 like that. And I just take a step back, I'm like, wow, it's so great to be back in the Olympic Games again. And I realized very quickly that I see things through the eyes of a 41-year-old much differently than I do when I was their age, and I appreciated it more. It was like people asked me the difference between Olympic Games, and yes, a lot of stuff had changed from the '84 to the 2008 Olympics, but it was really just the appreciation of being back there again. So I remember the night before my final race, the 50 freestyle, I qualified first time I ever qualified first, going into the finals in an individual event, and I'm sitting there the night before at the pool watching Michael Phelps go for his 7th Olympic medal. And I'm in the warm-up area. No one's allowed on deck unless you're an official or you're swimming in that heat. And so there was a warm-up area that had big, huge screen TVs so you can watch what was going on in the pool area, or you go into the stands with the rest of the team that's not swimming that day. And so I'm sitting there watching. I just got a massage, and I'm like, wow, Phelps looks great. He's going for his 7th Olympic medal. This is awesome. And he's losing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like he's now behind. And it was the 100 butterfly that you guys saw, like the photo finish that was plastered all over the news. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to lose. This is horrible. And he was in the flags with like 5 meters to go, and he comes in. It still looks like he lost, but he won. And then I'm seeing that poor guy who lost by 100th of a second. I'm like, God, that's gotta be like the worst feeling in the world. To lose by 100th of a second, oh my gosh. And so I congratulated Phelps, and then I went back to the Olympic Village, had my food, went to bed. And one of the things my coaches asked me before waking up, he said, listen, when do you want to go over? The finals are in the morning. Usually finals for any event, track and field swimming is always at night, but because of the time change, we had to swim preliminaries in the morning, semifinals at night, and finals the next morning, not at night. So I said, I want to be the first one there. He's like, great. So we go over there, and I always like to be the most prepared. And so we go over at 6:45 in the morning. There's a woman mopping the pool deck, and Bob Costas is in a little booth. And I'm like, hey, Bob, hey, Dara. And that was it. No one else was in the pool area. And I was like, oh, this is great. I get on the starting blocks because it's really hard to warm up during the Olympic Games in the competition pool. I'd always go in the warm-up pool. And, I'm getting a lay of the land of the blocks, and I dive in, and I memorize every nook and cranny in my lane, in lane 4, and where the cables are, and just so I know what's going on. It's one lap as fast as I can go, and I want to know everything in my race. And so I did all that. I get out of the pool, I take a shower, and then I wait until proper warm-up time, and I go back over and do my warm-up, and I walk into the ready room. And I remember looking in the ready room, and there's this 16-year-old kid, and it looks like she's about to throw up, and there's 8 of us in the finals. And I'm like, well, now I'm in the top 7, and we haven't even started our race yet. And then I walk over, and there's a girl about to pass out. I'm like, geez, I'm already in the top 6, and we still haven't swum yet. And I realized that people kept talking about my age and how old I am, but I had the advantage mentally of knowing what to know and what to prepare for and how to get ready for this race. And I had that advantage over these young kids. So everyone could talk about my age physically, but mentally I was much more mature than any of these kids and knew what to expect. So we march out, and I get behind my blocks, and they announce everyone, and I stand up on the starting blocks, and I'm ready, and I know the starting block by heart. They say, take your marks, and I bend down into the track start, and the gun goes off, and we go in the water, and I'm swimming my heart out. I have no idea where I am because I don't want to look, and I remember where that camera is. Okay, I got 15 meters left. Oh, there, I got 5 meters left. I come to the wall, and I touch, and I'm like, that felt pretty good, and I put my goggles up, and I look at the scoreboard in the opposite end of the pool, and now I'm squinting. I'm like, God, I can't see anything. I am so old. And I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, I think that's a 2 by my name. All right, I got second. That's the best individual medal I've ever won, is a silver, since the previous were bronze. And then I'm looking again, and I'm like, God, now I know why my parents used to squint. And I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, I said, well, maybe a US person got first and I got second. That'd be great. We'd be 1-2. And I see a GER by the number 1 name, Germany. I'm like, yeah, my coach is German. I guess that's okay, whatever. And then I'm like, well, what's the time? And it says 24.06 to 24.07. Now I'm like, oh my gosh. And I go, as you guys saw, I went underwater to congratulate the girl who won. And as I go under, the cuss words are coming out because no one can hear me. There's just bubbles and stuff. And I'm like, oh, hey, good job, and I congratulate her, which I was happy for her, and I go back underwater, the 3rd place person. I'm like, what the fuck, I lost, damn it. And I come up hey, great job, 3rd place, and that's about the only thing I could do because I couldn't understand, how did this happen? And I get out of the pool, and NBC's knows they get one question and one question only because I have 30 minutes to warm down, go get my medal for the ceremony, go back into the ready room and march out and anchor a relay. And so I get out and she puts a microphone in my face, Andrea Kramer, she's like, Dara, like, what could you have done? 1/100th of a second. I'm thinking, oh my God, if she only knew what I just said underwater. And I said, you know what? I shouldn't have filed my nails last night. And she's like, what? And I walked off because I left no stones unturned. I did everything I could. I felt like I was the most prepared, but I filed my dang nails the night before because I was bored before going to sleep. And I'm like, if you guys blink as fast as you can right now, like blink as fast as you can, 1/100th of a second is faster than how fast you can blink. That's how close it was. And so, but I knew I gave it everything I had. And I remember on the flight home, I ended up winning 3 silvers there. And I remember on the flight home thinking to myself, like, what could I have done? Do I have to do this again now at 45 years old? I'm gonna be in menopause by then. Like, how am I gonna try? I mean, I don't have my gold medal in an individual event. And so I'm flying home and I'm like, it was just bothering me. And then I started to think, I'm like, you know what? I did leave no stones unturned. And I did give it my best. And I listened to my coach and I ate the way I was supposed to eat. And you know, I had no answer. And the answer is, if you gave it everything you had, sometimes you don't always win the gold medal. And people ask me all the time what it takes to wage a successful comeback, and it's actually really simple. You have to want it, you want to have to keep winning, and you have to want it badly. You have to be determined to move closer to reaching your full potential rather than let your goals slip away. And I'm going to read one last thing to you before I close out here. Marian Wright Edelman, a great American woman and the founder of the Children's Defense Fund, wrote, I'm really grateful to have something that I'm passionate about and that to me is important. She says, you're not obligated to win, you're only obligated to keep trying and do the best you can. That's great advice because we don't win every day. And I learned that when I came home with 3 silver medals. So that's my story. I did try to go for a 6th Olympics. I got 4th at trials and missed the team by 9/100ths of a second and realized that it's time to hang up my suit and move on to other things. So thank you guys so much for today. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you for all you do for our country.
So come out here to the middle.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
So amazing inspirational story. So this group out here can resonate with that. We are certainly a very similar age, and some of us feel our age more than others. All these young folks, the ones that are in uniform are the young ones, and they do think that we're old, but that's okay. You are proving that age is just a number. So unbelievable small world connection here. So Dara was the captain of the Olympic team, the Olympic women's swim team in 1992. The co-captain of that team happened to be my wife. And so, true story. And so they share gold medals from the same events, relays. And Olympians are humble people. I didn't know this until I met my wife long after she was in the Olympics. And they keep their medals usually like in the sock drawer. And so, you know, if I was ever so successful, in the military we wear ribbons on our chest and things like that, and you know someone's accomplishments, but Olympians are generally just extraordinarily humble people, and so they keep in the sock drawer, you know. And so in the military, we give out coins for excellence and things like that, and usually display them in your office. And so, Dara, you are certainly SAME coin worthy, and I hope that this doesn't end up in the sock drawer, but in a place of honor in your home, the SAME coin. Thank you so much for your inspiration.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so this this is the beginning of our marathon week. So this was a marathon of a session. Thank you all for making it through here today. I hope you find some motivation there. Have a great day. Have a safe and fun night this evening at our opening reception. And tomorrow morning, we'll be right back in here, and we're going to get to hear from the service chiefs on their perspective, and we're going to turn over the leadership of the society. And so thanks. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and go get it.